have taken thousands of photos over the last decade. Yet, I never called myself a photographer. I just drove a city bus. And every weekend, I carried an old Polaroid camera in my coat pocket, capturing genuine smiles that nobody else noticed. Then came that rainy Tuesday. A woman stepped off my bus holding a tightly folded map. She asked for directions to the Old Town Market. I gave her directions, and without thinking, I clicked the shutter. 1 week later, after looking through my personal album, she turned to me, smiled, and said, "You're my type. My name is Ethan Walker. I am 36 years old, single, and for as long as I can remember, I have preferred watching life rather than speaking to it. Every single day, I drive the Route 14 bus through the quiet, fading streets of Oakridge. People board my bus carrying heavy groceries, unpaid bills, and tired eyes. But every once in a while, something magical happens. A mother whispers a joke to her toddler. Two old friends recognize each other after years apart. A young man gets a text message and breaks into a relief-filled grin. Whenever those real, unscripted moments happen, I reach into my jacket, pull out my vintage Polaroid camera, and snap a single photo. I don't post them online. I don't sell them. I don't show them to strangers. Over 10 long years, I have accumulated more than 6,000 instant photos. I keep them neatly organized in thick leather albums tucked away inside my small apartment. On the spine of every single binder, I write the same 4 words, moments worth keeping. To me, a photograph isn't about setting up lighting or finding the perfect angle. A real picture is about catching a soul when its guards are down. As I always say, a truly beautiful moment always comes unexpectedly. Oakridge was once a vibrant town, but time had not been kind to it. The heart of our community, the 60-year-old weekend farmers market, was on the brink of permanent closure. The town council was preparing to sell the land to a commercial real estate developer. If the market closed, more than 30 small local vendors, families who had worked those wooden stalls for generations, would lose their livelihoods forever. Enter Lily Bennett. Lily was 33 years old, a community development specialist hired by the town council to evaluate the market before the final vote. Lily was a wanderer. Her job took her all across the country, moving from one small town to another, helping struggling communities find their footing. But there was a rule she lived by. She never stayed in any city for more than 12 months. She packed her life into 2 suitcases, solved problems, and moved on before she could form roots. When Lily arrived in Oakridge, she noticed that the town lacked life. To build a marketing campaign that might convince investors to preserve the market, she needed a photographer. A local shopkeeper pointed her toward me, mentioning that the quiet bus driver always carried a camera. Lily walked into the central bus station on a quiet Thursday afternoon. She found me sitting on a wooden bench, cleaning the lens of my Polaroid. "Ethan Walker?" she asked, her voice clear and direct. I looked up. She was holding a clipboard filled with flyers and architectural notes. "I'm Lily Bennett," she introduced herself. "I'm running the revitalization project for the weekend market. I need someone who knows this town to shoot our promotional campaign. Someone who can take polished photos of the storefronts and products. I was told you take pictures." I looked down at the faded plastic casing of my camera. "I don't do commercial photography, Miss Bennett. I don't know how to set up promotional lighting, and I don't take staged shots of vegetables or signs." Lily frowned slightly, leaning against the bus stop pillar. "Why not? It's a paid gig, and it could save 30 families from losing their shops." "Because I only photograph what feels worth remembering," I replied quietly. "And you can't force something to be memorable just for an advertisement." Lily stared at me for a long moment. She didn't get angry. Instead, a curious, Gentle spark flickered in her eyes. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small brass volunteer badge from the market project, and pressed it into my palm. "Then don't take commercial photos," Lily said softly, looking directly into my eyes. "Help me create something worth remembering." Looking at her determined expression, I knew I couldn't walk away. The following Saturday morning, I walked into the Oakridge farmers market with my Polaroid camera hanging around my neck. Lily was already there, pacing back and forth with a clipboard, directing volunteers and trying to make the rundown wooden stalls look appealing. She expected me to line up the vendors, ask them to smile for the camera, and take clean, bright photos of their baked goods, fresh vegetables, and handcrafted items. Instead, I ignored her instructions completely. I didn't ask anyone to pose. I didn't ask anyone to look into the lens. I simply walked through the crowded aisles, watching and waiting. When Mrs. Gable, a 70-year-old baker who had been selling sourdough for 30 years, leaned over her counter to teach her 6-year-old grandson how to dust flour onto a loaf, I stepped forward. Click flash. The camera chimed, ejecting a white square of film. When young Leo, who worked at his father's flower stall, carefully handed a single red rose to a shy girl from his school and blushed, I clicked the shutter again. I caught Mr. Henderson, the local luthier, sitting on a wooden crate in the corner. His eyes closed as he carefully tuned a vintage acoustic guitar for a customer. I caught an elderly married couple standing near the coffee cart, sharing a single paper cup, laughing softly at an inside joke 40 years in the making. By midday, Lily caught up with me near the center fountain. She looked over my shoulder as I laid out a dozen emerging Polaroid prints on a wooden table to dry. Her jaw dropped. "Ethan," she said, her voice filled with utter confusion. "Where are the stall banners? Where are the shots of the produce? Where is the main sign? You took pictures of hands, laughs, and wrinkled faces." "I told you," I said gently, picking up the photo of Mrs. Gable and her grandson. "I don't take photos of things. I take photos of feelings." Lily looked down at the small square pictures. The colors were warm, slightly imperfect, but every single frame radiated an overwhelming sense of humanity and warmth. You could feel the flour on the baker's hands. You could feel the nervous excitement of the boy with the rose. You could hear the quiet melody coming from the old guitar. "This," Lily whispered, touching the edge of a print carefully. "This isn't an advertisement." "No," I agreed. "It's the reason this place exists." An hour later, word spread through the market that the bus driver was handing out pictures. Vendors began walking over to my small table out of curiosity. Old Mr. Henderson picked up the photograph of himself tuning the guitar. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he held the small print up to the sunlight. He had spent 50 years working in a dusty shop, rarely noticed by the people walking past. "Look at this," Mr. Henderson whispered, a faint, emotional smile spreading across his face. "I'm an old man now. I've spent my whole life tucked away in the back of this market. But this is the first time in my life I've ever felt beautiful." A crowd gathered around the table. People were pointing, laughing, tears welling in their eyes as they saw themselves not as struggling shopkeepers, but as the living beat of Oakridge. They saw their joy, their dedication, and their connection to one another. Lily stood on the outer edge of the crowd, watching the vendors pass the photos around like precious family heirlooms. She wasn't looking at the pictures anymore. She was looking at me. For the first time in 10 years of taking photographs, I realized that I wasn't just observing life from the driver's seat of a bus anymore. For the first time, I felt like I was standing right in the center of it, and it was all because of the woman holding the clipboard. Over the next 3 weeks, the market felt transformed. The atmosphere had shifted from gloomy desperation to a quiet, vibrant warmth. But despite the emotional uplift, reality was crashing down fast. The town council's final vote on the developer's offer was only 7 days away. One late evening, after the market stalls had closed and the crowds had cleared, Lily and I sat on the rear bench of my empty bus at the terminal station. The amber glow of the streetlights filtered through the rained-on windows, casting long, soft shadows across the aisle. Lily was staring out the window, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of her official project folder. "Where do you go after this?" I asked softly, breaking the long silence. Lily sighed, leaning her head back against the vinyl seat. "A small coastal town in Oregon. They're trying to save an old wooden pier. My contract here ends next Friday night, right after the council vote." I looked at her profile, the sharp line of her jaw, the tiredness around her eyes, and the quiet loneliness she tried so hard to hide behind her professional efficiency. "You've lived in 8 different towns in 4 years, I said gently. "Has there ever been a place that made you want to stay?" Lily went still. She didn't answer right away. She turned her head to look at me, her dark eyes reflecting the quiet streetlights. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but closed it again, looking down at her hands. "When you move constantly, Ethan," she murmured, "you don't get hurt when things fall apart. You fix what you can, pack your bags, and leave before you grow attached." "That sounds like a lonely way to live," I said softly. "It's safe," she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. To build momentum for the upcoming town council vote, Lily organized an outdoor photography exhibition at the market square on Wednesday night. Instead of traditional art frames or glass display cases, we strung simple wooden wires between the outdoor light posts. Using small wooden clothespins, we hung over 200 Polaroid photos I had taken over the past month. Beneath each photo, Lily had written a short, 2-sentence story based on her conversations with the townspeople. When the sun dipped below the horizon, soft warm fairy lights illuminated the square. Hundreds of residents walked slowly through the hanging photos. An 8-year-old boy named Toby pulled on his mother's sleeve, pointing up at a photo hanging near the center line. It was a shot of his mother, a single parent who worked 2 jobs, laughing candidly while holding a cup of hot cider. "Look, Mom," Toby said loudly, his voice carrying across the quiet square. "I've never seen you smile like that before. You look like a princess." The mother stared at the photo, covered her mouth with both hands, and burst into soft, overwhelming tears. Her neighbors stepped forward, wrapping their arms around her shoulders in a warm embrace. Lily stood near the edge of the square, watching the scene unfold. I walked up beside her, holding my old leather album, Moments Worth Keeping, which I had brought along to show her for the first time. Lily took the heavy leather binder from my hands. She flipped open the thick pages, revealing 10 years of captured human emotion. Strangers laughing on buses, children playing in rain puddles, elderly couples holding hands on crosswalks. She turned the pages slowly, her breath catching in her throat as she realized the massive, quiet ocean of empathy stored inside this single book. She closed the album, looked up at me, and let out a gentle, breathless laugh. "You're my type," she said softly, her eyes glistening under the warm string lights. I felt a sudden, sharp flutter in my chest. I looked down, slightly flustered, rubbing the back of my neck. "Lily, I'm just a bus driver." I stumbled over my words. "I don't think I'm the kind of guy who—" Lily shook her head gently, a compassionate smile touching her lips. "No," she interrupted softly, placing a warm hand on my forearm. "You misunderstand me, Ethan." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I don't mean type, In a romantic, superficial way, Lily explained, her voice steady and tender. I mean, you are the type of human being who always sees the quiet, beautiful truth in other people. In a world where everyone is trying to make themselves look perfect, you look at broken, ordinary people and make them realize they have worth. You make people feel seen, Ethan. That is the rarest type of person on this earth. Her words hit me with the force of a quiet thunderbolt. For 10 years, I had hidden behind my lens, believing I was just a ghost watching the world go by. Lily didn't just see my photos. She saw me. The emotional high of the exhibition was shattered the very next morning. At 8 a.m., the town council held an emergency meeting. The commercial developer had increased their cash offer by 30%, promising the town board immediate tax revenue if they approved the demolition of the market building. The council leader made a public announcement. Despite the heartwarming community events, sentimentality could not pay the town's debts. The vote to demolish the market was set to pass overwhelmingly on Friday evening. The vendors were devastated. Lily sat on the steps of the market office, her head buried in her hands, defeated. The system had won, just as it had in so many other small towns she had visited. It's over, Ethan, she whispered, her voice cracking. I failed them. The pictures were beautiful, but beauty doesn't buy real estate. I stood beside her, staring at the old wooden market building. I remembered the baker's hands, the guitar maker's smile, and the single mother crying under the fairy lights. No, I said firmly, reaching down to take her hand. Beauty doesn't buy real estate, but community can. What do you mean? Lily asked, looking up. We were trying to convince 5 politicians in a boardroom, I said, a sudden idea taking shape in my mind. We made a mistake. We should have been talking to the thousands of people who live in the surrounding cities. I proposed a radical, fast-paced campaign called Take Home a Moment. For the next 48 hours leading up to the council vote, every single person who visited the market and bought even $1 worth of goods from any vendor would receive a free, instant Polaroid portrait taken by me, right on the spot. But there was a catch. On the bottom white margin of every photo, we wrote the hashtag #SaveOakridgeMarket. Lily sprang into action. She used her professional media connections to pitch the story to regional news stations, while local teenagers blasted the photos across social media platforms. The response was explosive. By Friday morning, news stories about the bus driver photographer saving a market were going viral across the state. Thousands of people from neighboring cities, drawn by the raw, human warmth of the story, flooded into Oakridge. The streets were blocked with traffic. Lines of eager visitors stretched for blocks around the market. People weren't just buying produce, they were standing in line to get their Polaroid taken, to feel part of something real, grounded, and human in a digital world. When the town council convened on Friday evening, over 3,000 citizens surrounded the town hall, holding their custom Polaroid photos high above their heads in silent, beautiful protest. Faced with massive public pressure, local news cameras, and an unprecedented surge in local tourism revenue, the town council officially canceled the developer's contract and voted unanimously to preserve the Oakridge Farmers Market forever. 6 months passed. Autumn had settled over Oakridge, painting the trees in brilliant shades of amber, gold, and deep red. The market was thriving like never before, becoming a famous destination for travelers seeking genuine local culture and art. I was still driving the Route 14 bus. I liked my job. It kept me connected to the rhythm of the town. It was 5 o'clock on a cool October evening. I reached the final stop at the bus terminal overlooking the river. The last passenger stepped off, leaving the long vehicle quiet and empty. I parked the bus, turned off the engine, and pulled my trusted Polaroid camera out of my jacket pocket. The rear doors of the bus hissed open. I turned around. Standing in the doorway, holding a brown leather duffel bag, was Lily. She wasn't wearing a corporate badge or carrying a clipboard. She was wearing a simple wool sweater and a warm smile. "Your contract in Oregon ended?" I asked, my heart beating heavily against my ribs. "2 weeks ago," Lily said softly, walking slowly down the center aisle toward me. "Where are you headed next?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Lily reached into her bag and pulled out a thick, familiar leather album. It was the very first album I had ever filled, the one I thought I had lost months ago. She opened it to the very last page. Tucked into the vinyl sleeve was a single Polaroid photograph. It was the photo I had taken on the rainy Tuesday 6 months ago. A picture of a woman stepping off a bus with a folded map in her hand. Lily flipped the picture over. Written on the back, in my precise handwriting from 6 months ago, were 7 words. "She looks like someone searching for home." Lily raised her eyes to mine, her smile glowing in the soft sunset light streaming through the bus windows. "You know," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. I stopped searching. I felt a wave of relief and joy wash over me. I lifted my Polaroid camera to my eye, framing her beautiful face in the viewfinder, ready to capture the exact second she returned to me. Lily stepped closer. She reached out her hand and gently placed her palm over the camera lens, covering it completely. "Don't take a picture," she murmured, looking directly into my eyes. "This moment. Let's just remember it together." I lowered the camera, took her hand in mine, and smiled. Years ago, I thought a camera was the only way to save a moment from fading away. But looking at Lily, I realized the absolute truth of life. The most valuable moments are not the ones we capture on film, but the ones that capture us, the ones that change the way we live forever. As we walked out of the bus into the cool evening air, Lily looked back at me and whispered, "I'm glad you didn't miss my moment." Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give another person isn't helping them stand out or achieve perfection. It's helping them realize the incredible worth that has existed inside them all along. The most beautiful things in life are never found in flawless poses, but in the quiet, sincere ways we see and value one another. What do you think makes a person truly attractive to others? Physical appearance? Worldly success? Or the selfless way they make others feel loved and valued? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If today's story brought a smile to your face or reminded you to slow down and appreciate the quiet beauty around you, please give this video a like. And if you love emotional, inspiring stories about human connection, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss our next journey.